Alrighty, guys. Good evening. Hope everybody's had a good last 24 hours since we talked. And tonight. We're gonna talk about kind of the additional government influence in finance and the housing market, and that's going to pertain primarily to HUD. So you're going to hear HUD about 100 times tonight. So hopefully by the end you'll be able to kind of explain to me what HUD is, what they do, and whatnot. We're going to start off tonight by watching another YouTube video. Luckily this one is only 12 minutes, and it was made in 2013, and it's just a guy talking to a camera, so it's nothing like super heavy into detail background like yesterday's was. I'm sorry to put y'all through that again. Third time I apologize. Because I know it was rough. This one won't be as bad. It should be very, very good and informing to you. So we can go ahead and get that started here in a second.
I enjoyed yesterday's video. It reminded me of grade school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have slides printed or not today? Just because I can keep up with like Ariana's stuff.
And we're going to go over a couple really cool things today that I think every home buyer and realtor should know, and that's how to navigate through some different financing programs that are out there, some unique financing options for HUD homes. And so if you're looking to purchase a HUD home, let me first explain what a HUD home is. A HUD home is a property that had an FHA mortgage on it and was foreclosed on. And FHA takes these properties and then puts them back on the market. And they offer some special financing options for them. And a lot of people don't know how to decipher the different financing options available on HUD homes. So the first thing to do if you're looking to buy a HUD home is get a list of HUD homes out there in your area that are for sale. And where you can do that is at hudhomestore.com. That's hudhomestore.com. And when you go onto that site here, it'll come up and you can select your state. So we are in Michigan right now, so we're going to do Michigan. Now this would work the same for any state. And what I'm going to do just to kind of get a list of properties is I'm going to put in a zip code here. And let's see, 49024. And we'll see what comes up in that zip code. And so here in this 49024 zip code, we have two properties. And we'll just click on the first, well, let's do the second one. It's offered for sale here for $62,000. And what you're going to see when the property comes up is you'll see, the address and the bedrooms and bathrooms and all that stuff. And that's usually what people are looking at. But there's some important information in the right-hand column on this website. And when somebody calls me about a HUD home that they're interested in, the first thing I do is pull it up here on this website at hudhomestore.com, and I'll pull up the property. And there's a couple things you can do with HUD homes. So before we get into how to exactly decipher this, let's just talk about the financing options that are available. Now you can do any of the traditional type of financing. So that would be like a conventional loan with 5, 10, 15, 20+% down. You could do a rural development loan if the property is eligible for RD financing. You can do a rural development loan, and we can put a link if you want to check eligibility for RD financing. A good website to do that on is rdarea.com. Well, that's not what we're here to talk about. So we're here to talk really about the FHA financing options. And so since HUD foreclosed on these homes, HUD home is an FHA loan, and so through their own financing internally, they've offered up some different types of options with them. And so what they did is before HUD puts a property on the market, they actually have an appraisal done on the property. And you can look at the listing here and you can see the date the house came on the market. So this one we're looking at here on Stratford was put on the market 7/11/2013. And you can look and see the value that the appraisal came back at. And so the FHA appraisal that was done is going to carry with the property on an FHA loan. So if somebody's getting a conventional loan or an RD loan or a VA loan, there's going to be a new appraisal that's done. But if they're getting an FHA loan, they're going to be forced to use the appraisal that's out there. So this particular appraisal came in at $62,000, which is actually the list price. So before we go any further, let's talk about that, because a lot of times these houses come on the market and there's so many bidders on them, they'll actually sell for more than what they're listed for. If the appraisal was at, in this example, $62,000, and the bid is for $65,000, and that borrower is getting an FHA loan, they're actually going to have to bring in the difference, because a new appraisal can't be done, and they're paying more than what HUD feels the house is worth. They would actually have to bring in their 3.5% down plus an additional $3,000. So that's very important. If you're getting an FHA loan and you're buying a HUD home, you want to check the appraised value here on the website to make sure you're not overbidding, and if you are, that you have the cash to bring in the difference. The next thing in the column here under the as-is value, which is the appraised value, it says FHA financing, and then it's going to have a couple different abbreviations here. So the one that we're looking at right now says IE, insured escrow. And what that means is that the appraisal that came back had some required repairs, and HUD is allowing those repairs to be financed into the loan as part of the transaction. And this can be done with a very simple standard, it's called an FHA 203B loan with a repair escrow. And so as the realtor, when the realtor is putting in the bid, they'll check the box FHA 203B with a repair escrow. And what that means is there's a list of repairs that that's out there on this appraisal. And what'll happen is, if you look down just a little bit further, it says repair escrow. And in this one, $2,200. And that $2,200 will get financed into the loan. So the customer will put their 3.5% down, whatever they get it for, and then we as the lender will add an additional $2,200 into the loan. What happens is we close, and then the buyer is going to have a contractor come in, complete those repairs, and then we'll re-inspect the property, make sure everything was completed, and then pay the contractor out of that money we're holding in escrow. Now, this can only be financed into the loan on HUD property. So if somebody's getting an FHA loan on another property, they can't do a 203B and do it this way. This is very unique for HUD homes and comes in real handy for getting a lot of these required repairs taken care of. Now let's take a look and see if this house has the published repairs on it. Some of them do, some of them don't. What you do is you click on addendums and you go over to, there's a box here that says repair escrow items. And if we pull that attachment up, let's see, we get a list of repairs. And the repairs here, in this example, again, install permanent handrails, $200, loose soffit on front and back of house, $100, gas furnace not functional, so they have $1,500 set aside for a furnace. And then there's some defective paint, some peeling paint. And then you always see that they hold an extra 10% for contingency in case there's some additional things that pop up while the contractor's out there doing some work. All right, so let's go back here to our HUDhomestore.com site. So we just looked at the repair escrow items that were listed. Another place you can kind of get a clue of the condition of the property is this PCR report. And we'll pull that up, and you can see here, they give a list of some things that HUD tested. There's you can see here, gas furnace not functional. They tested some other things in the house. So that's always something good for buyers to know about, to look at there. All right, back to our site again. So that is probably one of the most popular things that we do, is this repair escrow program on these HUD homes. The other option that a buyer has is a 203K loan. And so you'll also see on here, it says 203K eligible, yes. And what that means is it is eligible for a 203K renovation loan. That's a little different than a repair escrow loan. With the repair escrow type of financing on this, what we're doing is we're financing in only the appraiser required repairs. So it might have a purple toilet that you don't like. So sad, too bad. We can't, as long as that toilet flushes, it's not written up, we can't put that into the loan. However, with the 203K, we can finance anything in. So if you want a new kitchen, new bathroom, you want an addition put on the house, that's where a 203K financing comes in. And you can watch some of our other videos for more details on 203K loans. And now I'm going to see if I can find another house here and show you another example of what is commonly seen on these HUD homes. So let's see. Okay, so I found a house that is for sale for $8,000. So for all you motivated people out there, this one's $8,000. Now I guarantee this house needs some work. And so I pull it up, and the first thing I notice is that it says FHA Financing Uninsured. So the other one we looked at said insured, and this one says uninsured. What that means is that the repairs basically exceeded $4,000, and HUD will not allow, the repairs are too extensive to allow for any kind of repair escrow loan. And so in this case, that cannot be done. So that's where it comes in. You want to look at what type of financing is being offered on the house. This one is still eligible for a 203K loan. So since maybe there's $15,000 worth of renovations needed, 203K loan comes into play because we can do major renovations like that. All right. One other thing I want to point out is when you're looking at HUD homes, another thing to look at is how much bid time is left. And so when you look up at the top here, it shows bid submission time remaining 3 days, 9 hours. So what that means is when HUD first puts these houses on the market, they're open up to bids where they collect bids on them. And then in this case, in 4 days, basically, they're going to review the bids and make a decision on the highest one. If they don't like any of them or there's no bids, then bidding goes to every 24 hours and it opens up to investors. So currently, investors can't bid on this $8,000 house. My guess is if it doesn't sell, an investor will swoop in, once it opens up to them and pick it up for $8,000. So that's kind of how that works. Now we have some handouts and printouts and stuff too, and we'll put some links in the video. But here's kind of a cheat sheet on what we talked about that we'll throw up there as a link. And if you're looking for more information about just repairs in general, what's looked at with repairs and different properties and things, we did a video about appraiser required repairs. So we'll throw a link out there for you on that as well. And if you have any questions, as always, you can get a hold of us at amerifirst.com. I'm Jeremy Drolbeck. Thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. Yeah, so kind of like you said, I mean, who would have thought that you could get a house for $8,000? I mean, did you think you could be able to buy a house for $8,000? Well, I mean, it's kind of different in Michigan to here. For the most part, the property itself, the land, the raw land that houses are located on, especially around here, DFW, the Austin area, you're not going to really find any kind of land that's big enough to put a house on for $8,000. So that's kind of Michigan specific, but yeah, HUD's a very good tool to utilize if you are looking for something kind of cheaper, or your clients are looking for something and they're not able to qualify for as much of a loan. You can always talk to them about HUD. That's why in this class in finance, we'll talk about, and I'll say it many times, anytime you have a client or a buyer who's wanting to buy, you're going to want to send them to multiple lenders. You can have your favorite lender. I'm sure Stefan has a favorite lender that he likes to work with. I have a favorite lender. Justin has a favorite lender, and they might not all be the same. They could all be, but they're probably not. So you can send them to your favorite guy, but you're always going to want to send them to multiple people. Let them window shop. Let them talk to each lender, see what they, some lenders are going to work harder for them than others will. Some lenders will find out different deals and that kind of thing, trying to get the best loan for the client. So anytime you send a buyer or somebody who's trying to finance anything, always advise them to go to multiple lenders, because if you just go to the one, yeah, you might think it's good, but you never know, it could have been better. So, and if you send them multiple, they're going to think, holy cow, this person's doing so much work, contacted multiple people for me, like they're really on top of the game. They love that kind of stuff. So I always send multiple. It doesn't matter even, I'm talking about lending right now, but appraisals, inspectors, all that. Let them call, give them multiple options, let them call around and pick for themselves. A lot of it is, especially because if they find something through the lending process and they feel like that they got kind of screwed, they can come back to you and say, well, he recommended this one person, and so I thought I had to go through them. It's not only giving them the option to pick and they'll like you for it, it saves you from a lot of liability down the road that could possibly pop up. You put that next. So chapter 3, we're going to be talking about additional government influence. A lot of today does have to do with HUD, and can you tell me what HUD means? Why? No, it's housing urban development, and that's a big part. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, right there. Yeah. So HUD, and you'll hear this a lot once you get your license. HUD is thrown around quite a bit. There's a lot of people who apply through HUD or get a HUD voucher. And a HUD voucher, what that pretty much is it's done a lot for the leasing of homes for lower income people, but it's also for the purchase as well, like we saw in that video. It's typically low income areas, low income areas that qualify for HUD housing. As they said, there are FHA loans that have been foreclosed on. We'll kind of get more into FHA loans later in this finance course. But FHA, what you'll notice about all government loans when they loan out money is that they require very little money down. So it kind of incentivizes house buying because the government can take a hit somewhat. So they're able to lend you the money without you having to take a really big financial. If you take out a conventional loan, it's typically 20% down that you have to put on the house, 20% in cash, and then whatever closing cost is what you have to bring to closing for the sellers. With government loans, you'll see they can get as much as $0 down for VA loans. And that's kind of obviously geared towards veterans and people in those struggling situations. But coming back to HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, one way they work is I was working with a client a while back. He was a single father, had kids, but was making only a little over $1,000 a month on his own. And anybody living in the college station, really anybody in general, if you think about making a little over $1,000 a month and being a single parent having kids, that would be a huge struggle. That'd be something that's very difficult to go through and overcome. So the government has decided to develop this HUD, and what it does is, if you qualify, and the restrictions are very, very crazy. I mean, just like with any government program, there's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, a lot of paperwork that has to be signed. But if you qualify, what they'll do is pay for half of either your mortgage or your rent. So this father, we got him signed up, we got him registered through HUD. He was confirmed and was able to receive it. So we found him a place where he was able to move in, pay half a month's rent, or pay half of the rent, and the rest of the money was able to go to obviously food, childcare expenses, all that kind of stuff. We were also able to find him additional government assistance because, I mean, in this business, yes, we are real estate agents. We are doing it as a job for money. We are here to make money. But another aspect of this is, helping people. Whether it be they're wealthy and you're helping them find their dream home that they've been working all their life for, or somebody who can't afford it, and you're helping them try to find some place that they are able to move into. This is a business of helping people, and that has to be a passion of yours. And I mean, it's a really big part. You're not only will you act as an agent, but you'll act as a counselor. You'll act as a financial aid. You'll kind of be all over the place in what you do in this business. But I promise you, you won't regret it. It's very enjoyable. If you love talking to people and helping people, this is definitely the business for you. So going back to that, sorry, kind of got off on a tangent there. But going back to the HUD housing and the $1,000 a month, you know, when you qualify for government loans and government assistance, from what y'all know and probably the stimulus checks and whatnot, are they very direct and quick with their payments to the American public? Do y'all know?
I haven't got a stimulus.
You haven't gotten stimulus? No, neither of y'all got stimulus. Well,
Ever. My mom thanked me on the taxes the first go around, and then I haven't done my taxes this year. So that's why it's on that.
you tap into that stimmy money.
I know. The moment like my roommates, everyone got it. I was like,
Yeah. So going back to that, you know, I'm sure people online, maybe if one of y'all had gotten a stimulus check, you know, I mean, really, if you've dealt with the government at all, you go into the DMV. Are they very quick in their actions and how they work? Is it a very smooth process?
Is very slow.
Yeah,
I
of
know
course, yeah.
that one.
Yeah, it's very, very slow. Anything with government that has to do with government affairs, it's very, very slow. A ton of bureaucratic hoops and all that kind of stuff that you have to jump through. So it's never fast. And so when it comes to paying this half rent for HUD housing, what typically happens a lot is, you know, the single parent or whoever is struggling to pay this rent or mortgage. I mean, whatever they do make, typically they are gonna be the first ones to pay it. They're gonna pay on time. They have kids to feed, kids to take care of, so they're gonna be sure to pay their rent and give their children a roof over their head. But do you think the government is very quick to pay that other half to the landlord? No, never. It's. I mean, they're always a couple months late. And I mean, with COVID, I was trying to read some stories, and I mean, people who had qualified for HUD housing weren't getting their checks. The landlords weren't getting their checks till like 6 months later. Afterwards, luckily we had you can't kick anybody out of their living residence for not paying rent. Luckily we had all that, so it kind of got sorted out. But yeah, a lot of the times the government is terrible with keeping up on payments and helping you out. So, and not only does that screw the renter or the home buyer, it also screws the landlord or whoever's receiving that mortgage, because typically you're not making. I mean, when you own an investment property and you rent it out or you're financing it, it's not free. You still have to, if you're a landlord, you still have to pay the mortgage on it. Or if you're selling the house, I mean, you still need payments to do other business. So with them being really with them being really slow in the payments, and in this situation that with my former client, the mortgage on the house was $750. The rent was $1,000, and the mortgage was $750. So my client was paying his $500 every month, but the government wasn't paying their $500. And with the mortgage being $750, that's putting the landowner or whoever's leasing the property, that puts them in the hole now. They're $250 in the hole every month because the government's not able to pay. So that's kind of a big kind of disadvantage of HUD and just the government in general. They're very, very slow. They don't like to work very fast. A lot of hoops to jump through. And so that's why HUD housing and HUD vouchers, you'll hear them a lot in this business. They get a really bad rap among real estate agents. You'll have a lead come in and figure out it's for a HUD voucher for a rental property. And well, bless you. And not a whole lot of agents want to take it because they're a headache. It's a headache to deal with, the government. Always, typically. So that's kind of what HUD is, and we'll definitely talk more into that today in this chapter. Also, additional government influence is federal legislation. And we've talked about it multiple times, but with the switching of administrations, A ton of changes have come to the real estate market. I was looking at today, kind of looking at the executive orders that Biden proposed within his first 30 days. He had 40 something executive orders. Well, 3 of them had to do with the real estate market, the housing market, and bringing back Obama era policies for housing that he required. We won't go into the specifics of those because there's no need to through this financing course, but just something you always want to know. Federal legislation is always changing, fluctuating, back and forth. So you're going to have to stay up to date. And luckily, Trek and NAR will send you emails constantly once you get your license, letting you know of any updates that's going on. So also state and local financing agencies. They have separate rules and regulations that are imposed on real estate agents. And if we're being honest, the local agencies, they have the most impact on this, honestly, from, a relative standpoint. If somebody in the Bryan College Station area, they kind of switch up how real estate agents, not even in finance, but how real estate agents are supposed to act or the duties that they're supposed to perform, it's going to be a lot easier for the Bryan College Station MLS to put a new act out and then see if the agents are responding and correctly performing that act, as opposed to, the federal legislation. If Biden were to propose something right now for real estate agents, saying that we had to wear 2 masks every time we went into a house, or we had to double glove up. It's going to be really hard for the federal government to go around to all the thousands and hundreds of thousands of real estate agents in the country and make sure they're performing those laws. So really, when it comes down to it, state and local financing and really just general agencies and legislations, those are what will affect us the most. And then ag lending. Ag lending, when you go to most major banks, if you go to a Wells Fargo, if you go to Chase, and you walk in your cowboy boots, jeans, and you say, "Hey, I want a loan for some raw land out there, outside of Bryan College Station," the big banks aren't going to do it. With ag land, the value of it's always shifting, way more than residential, way more than commercial. It's always fluctuating due to all kinds of circumstances. So these big banks, they don't typically deal with large amounts of land. They kind of leave it to specialized lenders that deal with the ag lending specifically. Yes. So, yeah. So the primary activities of HUD, the HUD Supervision, the FHA and Ginnie Mae, those first 2 boxes, they both have specific regulations and requirements in regards to lending. So you'll hear FHA, Ginnie Mae, we'll get into Freddie Mac, Farmer Mac. There's tons of lending agencies that are government ran. These 2 are fairly large, and they contain their own specific regulations on what they lend and how they lend. The CDBG of housing vouchers. Anytime you see vouchers, it's going to be those are those HUD vouchers that I was referring to earlier, that talk about half of either mortgage or half of the rent being paid. And then HUD also oversees the fair housing enforcement. HUD it's a big character in the government, and a big agency that employs tens of thousands of people. So they're constantly shifting. Their duties are constantly shifting, kind of what their regulations are. It's always jumbled in with, again, the change in administrations. And yeah, these are some of the main components of HUD, but there are many, many others. You're not going to have to know all of them, and we're not requiring you to because you won't for that test. But we just want to give you like a general idea of kind of what all is enclosed in the HUD organization. Yeah, so HUD Supervision. These are a lot of the programs that are ran by HUD. The Neighborhood Stabilization Program. This is typically with more low-income areas, more run-down areas in a city. They will, a developer will come in and say, well, I want to come in and, kind of reinvigorate this part of the city. So what HUD will do is they'll give them, $200,000 to come in and try to revamp a neighborhood or something. Typically, since it is the government, they skim as much as they can. They'll give you the lowest amount that they possibly can because they're not trying to give up their money just like everyone else. And so typically the Neighborhood Stabilization Program is done by wealthy people who like to come in and for marketing. If Wyatt's a billionaire and he comes in and I guess if you're a billionaire, you wouldn't really need $200,000. Well, say you're up and coming, you're a businessman and you work in real estate and you're in the Houston area, and well, you know how to kind of re-educate and reinvigorate a neighborhood. So you go to the HUD and you say, well, I want this much money to kind of bring up this neighborhood. Well, they give you $200,000. Typically, it's going to cost you more than $200,000, so you're going to have to come out of the pocket a little bit to boost it up and make it to what their requirements are for the money. But what a lot of people typically do with it is, they'll put a billboard up. Oh, well, I'm Wyatt and I helped this neighborhood and I brought it back up. It's typically done for marketing reasons and to kind of get your name out there. But also enclosed under the HUD supervision is Hope for Homeowners. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, formerly known as Section 8. Again, that's the vouchers that I was talking to you about, half rent, half mortgage. The Native American Indian Housing Program, and Good Neighbor Next Door. And I this list is here, and you're going to want to know stuff like the Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity Act. You're going to know about the Fair Housing Act and the Civil Rights Act, and you're going to know kind of the general idea behind all of them. But if you were to go and look up the Rehabilitation Act, it's going to be a 6,000-page document of what all is encased in that. And so, there's probably 100,000 pages worth of reading here in all these acts. And we obviously don't want you to have to, you're not going to have to learn all that. You're just going to need to know the names and kind of the general idea of what they represent. But we're going to talk about we're actually going to go into quite a bit of detail here about the Good Neighbor Next Door and kind of what they do. So I'll take a here. So why? I just want to ask you kind of before we get into this, do you know any nurses, police officer, EMT, anything like that? You know anybody by name? Yeah, you do. Everybody online, do y'all know any nurses, police officers, EMTs, firefighters, paramedics? Yeah. So what I'm gonna show you here is this Good Neighbor Next Door Act, and it's on the HUD website. And what it is basically in speaking with HUD, they want to again reinvigorate parts of the community that are typically low income. So what they do is they'll offer this Good Neighbor Next Door program, and we'll look through here for who can participate at first. First is law enforcement. So a person qualifies as a law enforcement officer for the purposes of the Good Neighbor Next Door sales program if the person is employed full-time by a law enforcement agency in the federal government, a state, a unit of general local government, or an Indian tribal government, In carrying out such full-time employment, the person is sworn to uphold and make arrests for violations of federal, state, tribal, county, township, or municipal laws, and the full-time employment in paragraph A of this section in the normal course of business directly serves the locality in which the home is located. So it's pretty much the same thing for as well firefighters and EMTs, along with teachers. And these are public school teachers, K through 12. Unfortunately, it does not apply to professors at all. But if you work full-time, that's kind of the key, is if you work full-time in any of these professions and the house that you're talking about is located in the district that you were working in, then you will qualify for this good neighbor next door. And what it is basically, we'll go over here and look for it. So once you get your license and you know some of these people, an easy way to get a new lead, a new client, is to ask them, hey, I know you're a police officer, I know you're a cop, or same thing. I know you're a teacher, I know you're an EMT. How would you feel about getting a home for half the price? Now, I mean, if I came up to you and offered you that, what would you say? Heck yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll take a home half off. McKenna, you in the same boat?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? I'll take a half price home. And so, yeah, what it is HUD is technically, they have few requirements. The only requirements are that you must live in the residence for 3 years, and you must maintain and keep it basically looking pretty. If you keep it presentable and you make it look pretty, you have to live in it for 3 years. You can own this home for half of its value. And a lot of people, you know, I mean, if you find somebody who's in one of those professions and they like to do some investing or whatnot, this is good for them, because once they move out after those 3 years, they can move into a different house, into another HUD home if they'd like, and they can start renting out that property for full value. So you're only paying half the mortgage still, but you're making full rent on it. So if you have any, you know, EMTs, firefighters, friends who also like to invest, that's a really good investment opportunity for them. But we'll come through here and we'll kind of look through, like that guy said, we'll just go all in Texas because there's not a whole lot. But yeah, we look here. There's, I mean, properties all over the place. North Richard Island, Texas. Let's see if we can't find something. Lubbock, good old Lubbock, Texas. So now, I mean, again, these aren't the highest quality of homes, and they're not going to be the best in the best like places, the best neighborhoods. And the reason that HUD kind of incentivizes this program so well is, you know, if you're moving into a low income part of town and you're a police officer, what does that do to the crime rate in that area? It's going to lower it. Not really the same with an EMT, but I've heard this used in a lot of lectures and whatnot. If an EMT moves into the area and it's a low income, high crime area, and you know somebody's hurt, either shot or stabbed or any kind of situation like that, I mean, it's going to be good to have an EMT in the area. So we kind of incentivize people, and then teachers. Obviously, teachers are, you know, the people who raise the next generation of youth. So we want them around kids. We want them around, you know, typically they are good role models and good guiders for kids. So that's why we offer it to them as well. But going through here, you can see, you know, it's got some work to do. All you have to do is keep it presentable. You know, but for $63,000, so you know you'll be paying what is that? $31,500, basically for this house, and all you have to do is live in it for 3 years. I'll tell you, I mean, most people they can pay the mortgage on a $31,000 note over 30 years. That's going to be fairly cheap. They'll be able to improve this quite a bit, and then obviously hope to rent it out and make some money off of it in the future. But with them also being the landowner, they will have to live. They don't have to live there for the full life of the loan, but they are expected to maintain ownership for the full life of the loan. Once that note is fully paid off, they can go back in and they can sell it or do whatever they want with it at that point. Let's see here. You know, and the thing is a lot of agents don't know about these programs. I'm going to be honest, even for myself, I just get so busy in the hustle and bustle of everything that's going on. I forget I've had other HUD housing applicants that I forgot to look and find the specific requirements. Going back here, these are all the homes. Oh, where did they go? That's not cool.
Probably in one of the 20 tabs.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, it's right here. So these are all the single family homes.
I have a question.
Hit me with it.
So if, for example, the HUD home gets sold for half of the price, is that something that's going to be shown on on any kind of documentation? So if for example, the contract says within 3 years, if you're living here, you get to buy the house for half of the price, will that be on the MLS?
No, so HUD homes aren't put on the MLS, or some of them are, but for the most part they aren't. So when a firefighter moves into one of these homes, they are buying it for half price, but just like the HUD vouchers, the federal government is paying for the other half of that loan. It's not that it's just being sold at half price. The federal government is going to subsidize the other part of that loan.
It'll be on the contract.
Oh,
It's HUD, but
Yes.
it's not going to be on the MLS or anything like that.
oh, okay.
That
That makes sense. All right, cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
But as you can see, HUD, they offer all kinds of homes from the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA, the FDIC, and these are all, when the VA has to foreclose on a property that they had to retain ownership of, this is where they'll typically sell it. Most government agencies will go back and sell through the HUD website, since it is the Bureau of Housing and Urban Development. Customs, Marshal Service, all that kind of stuff. It's all going to be in here. So another thing is, you don't have to be, as it was saying in the video that we watched beforehand, you don't have to be in any of these programs to be able to bid on these houses. You can just be a regular person who bids on a HUD house. The only thing is you have to have a broker that is licensed by HUD and has HUD certification to be able to bid on these homes, because as you can see, it's only 86,000, but I'm sure if you were to do a real estimate of the property and what you could fix it up for, you could turn it for a nice profit if you get it at 86,000. So it's just, in looking for brokers in the future, when y'all go to find brokers yourselves, you're going to know kind of the specifics of them, what kind of certifications they have, what all they have access to, because a lot of brokers are going to, hit you with, the fluff of it all. Oh, well, we don't do a whole lot of fees throughout the month, or we don't, do this, or our fees are really cheap, and we offer all these amenities throughout the office. But you're going to want to check and see, who has the HUD certification, who's in multiple MLSs, so you're not stuck in one city or one area or one county. You're going to want to see who has in brokers, and the HUD's a big one. You're going to want to know if your broker is HUD approved or HUD certified, so you can afford these opportunities to your clients. You will be able to, if you run into a police officer, or you run into a firefighter, and they're wanting a house. If you hit them with you know, you can get a house for half price. Guarantees, I mean, probably, you know, odds are they're going to hop on that deal. And as a real estate agent, you still get the 3% of that sale. So it's not, you don't get half of your commission. You still get the full commission, which is always a good thing. So that's something to keep in mind, kind of when looking at brokers.
So is the HUD website available for everyone to look on
Yeah.
houses? So it's not like MLS how you have to have a number put in.
No, yeah. You can go right now, look up the HUD website, come look at all these houses, scroll through, see where they're at, what they're listed for, what the bid is, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, you just won't have access to actually bid on it because it has to be through the certification. You're gonna have to log in, see the HUD registered bidder right here. And if you want to buy through here, you can find a broker, and it's a good way to get leads right there. So, see if there's anything else I want to show you about HUD. Yeah, just kind of talking more. HUD is, you know, once you start to utilize it and the things that it provides, it's a very hot commodity among real estate agents, especially not newer agents. Newer agents, like I said, typically don't know about it. I don't typically work a lot with it. I don't know if Stefan does or not. I haven't heard him. You know, he's kind of shaking his head back there. No, he doesn't deal a whole lot with HUD. But
I
this
had
is
someone try and put in the HUD application for like a lease, but the landowner didn't accept it.
yeah, I've had the same.
Some landowners won't accept a
Won't accept,
HUD
yeah.
application.
It's
So
hard.
It comes up to the landowner then?
Well, it's if it's a lease. If they're
Oh.
actually buying, then
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, if they're leasing, like I said, you know, when they're leasing and the government pays half, and the tenants pay half. Well, like I was saying, you know, HUD vouchers kind of get a bad rap
Yeah, gotcha.
because they're thinking most homeowners are going to be like, oh, I'm not going to get my full payment.
Yeah.
It's not going to be on time all the time, so they'll kind of deny people, and they do have the right to do that, to discriminate based off, you know, economic status. So, yeah, a lot of homeowners, if a home is not specifically HUD approved or a HUD home, they will typically turn away tenants who want to rent in that home. But like I was saying, with experienced agents, I've talked to one, and she's on HUD every morning, first thing in the morning. She's checking HUD and seeing if there's any new houses up, if there's any kind of property, because I mean it's a cash cow when you're able to offer so many, when HUD actually offers so many deals and so many you know, incentives to use the program. If you can find a good property on there, I mean, there's no reason to jump on it. Last lecture we did over this, the house was like a 4,000 square foot, like kind of like a Spanish villa type looking house that was just kind of in a more rundown neighborhood, and its starting bid was like 400,000. So not all houses on this. I mean, it's just today that the houses are kind of a little more rundown, a little cheaper. But as you can see, I mean, there's, you know, the deadline for this. You have to put it in within the next. What's that? Oh yeah, bid submission time remaining 5 hours and 42 minutes. They go pretty quick, and there's always new stuff uploaded. There's always people foreclosing on their houses and stuff who've gotten FHA government incentivized loans. So there's always new properties being put on this, and I would really recommend y'all to you know, go through and kind of look at it and just mess around with it. So when you do get your license, you're kind of familiar with it and you know what's going on. Yeah, that's about all I want to talk on that. I'm sure y'all are tired of hearing about. Yeah, so I'll just go through and read these. Like I said, y'all don't need to know what all is in them, what all they contain, what all they offer. But under the Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity are all these acts: the Fair Housing Act, Civil Rights Act, Housing and Community Development Act, Rehabilitation Act, Americans with Disabilities Act, Age Discrimination Act, Education Amendments, and Architectural Barriers Act. Then interstate land sales. So this is not really a big thing anymore. This was actually passed in 1968, so it doesn't pertain a lot to what we do nowadays. But back in the day, people who lived in Arizona would send mail across state lines all over the United States. Obviously, before 1968, there wasn't a whole lot of internet. There wasn't a whole lot of TV. So people, just knew what they knew about Arizona. I mean, it was probably warm, sunny, that kind of thing. They didn't know it was a desert. So what real estate agents would do, investors, homeowners, developers, they would send out mail and say, move to Arizona. We got year-round sunshine. It's always beautiful. It's always warm. Well, what they didn't explain is it's always 115 degrees and hot as crap, and you lived in a desert. Another thing they would say, in Louisiana, they'd say the soil is good for crops. Like move to Louisiana, and the development that they were talking about would be, right next to a swamp, swamplands, wetlands, like something that you don't want your house. You don't want to be pouring a solid concrete foundation on marshland. It's gonna crack and deteriorate. Within a couple years. That's why a lot of them built on stilts, pure beam, that kind of thing. We'll learn more about that stuff later on. Just sign here. That's all you got to do. They'd offer low rates. All you got to do is just move here, sign here, and it's amazing. And so the regulation under Consumer Financial Protection Bureau as of 2012. It was passed in 1968, but this was created in 2012. It prohibits developers and agents from selling or leasing a lot. And HUD must okay the disclosures for that lot based on past ownership of land. They were selling land that wasn't rightfully theirs. That's pretty easy to do, especially back in the day when it was there was not a whole lot of electronic documentation. It was easy to, kind of go over here and say, oh, we sold you this plot of land, and then go to somebody across the country and sell them the same plot of land. And then, once you get the money, get out of town, and people are fighting over that same plot of land. So past ownership, the state of title, whether it was clear, whether it had a cloudy title, they weren't disclosing that. The physical characteristics of the property, which is, kind of what these are talking about, the year-round sunshine in Arizona and good soil for crops in Louisiana, were definitely misleading. And the services or utilities in the area, they were also lying about those. And talking about kind of what is, fair, how do I put it?
For housing?
No, yesterday we talked about what was covered by Regulation Z, and we'll talk a little bit more about Regulation Z, but do any of you remember what Regulation Z regulated and what agents were allowed to do in regards to, does that question not even make sense? Be honest. No? No? Okay, never mind. I thought that was a good question. I wrote up right there. So community programs that are offered by HUD. The community development block grants. McKenna, what is the last word in that sentence? In that very top,
Grants?
Grants, yeah. And who gives grants? Yes, the government gives grants, yes, whether it be state, local, or federal. And do you have to pay back grants?
Dude.
Huh? No. Actually, grants is basically just free money. Technically free money. Not really though. As we talked yesterday, there's no such thing as free money. So why might want to come in and redevelop a particular block? It's a block grant. He'll want to come in and redevelop a block here in College Station. So he'll go to the city of College Station. Hey, you know, Sulphur Springs is really, really run down. It needs a whole lot of work. Give me $50,000 and I'll boost it up and bring it back. Well, I mean, do you think grants, since they are giving you money, is it easy to get? Is it easy to convince them to give you a block grant?
Probably.
No, it's very difficult and rarely ever done. But we need to talk about it just because it's in the material that you'll have to require. So it's nothing that you'll deal with really as agents a whole lot. But it typically takes months of work with the city and data collected from the area where you're trying to get that grant to prove that the amount of money that you're asking for is worth it to the city, and that what you're going to do is actually going to bring kind of money back in by rejuvenating it. And when talking about urban renewal, that's just more talk about the revitalization within the communities. Public housing. Public housing has become kind of a problem. It's very limited in what is offered by the government. Typically what happens is somebody who is lazy or doesn't really want to work, would rather live off government assistance. They get a lot of the public housing that's offered throughout the United States, which really hurts, those who really deserve it, like mentally or physically ill people. Obviously, if you're at home and you just don't want to work, you'd rather live off a government check, and there's somebody who has mental or physical ailments that's hindering them from being able to work and purchase a property. Obviously, there's a problem with that, and that's kind of like the big problem that's going on with public housing right now is we're just kind of willy-nilly giving it to everyone and not the people who really need it the most. So it's really a lot of reform is needed for it, and a lot of agents are coming into the field trying to reform the sector of public housing. But it's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of people to deal with, and like anything else in talking about the government, it takes time. It takes time, and there's a lot of bureaucracy crap that you have to deal with. So, they, kind of a lot of things that have, one company or organization that has come in and it deals a lot with public housing is Habitat for Humanity. And Ms. Vita, do you know what Habitat for Humanity, kind of what they do?
Yes. So usually what they do is they collect. It's kind of like Salvation for Army. I'm so sorry. They basically acquire materials. Like I know that there's one in downtown where they acquire building a HUD housing, and it's not just for building. They also get like food, like for food shelters, and the clothing for anybody that's in need.
Yeah. So Habitat for Humanity is a great organization, and kind of in regards to real estate, they'll come in and they will build a family a house, and kind of whatever they need. But the only thing that they require is whoever they built that house for, they ask that they come back, and when they're building the next house, that they come back and help. And then from there, it's just kind of like a snowball effect, gaining members to help build. And then also, yes, they deal a lot with donations. They get tons of materials donated, money, food, so they can keep. I mean, they are a charity organization, and that's how they run. But yeah, they build houses, and then they ask they ask the people living in them that they say, okay, you don't have to pay, but all that we ask is that you come back and put in effort to help continue our cause and help others benefit from this as well. So that's just kind of what they do in regards to public housing. There's other organizations as well that kind of do that kind of work. But Habitat for Humanity is the big one that a lot of people know, and that a lot of people, some of you might have even worked with. I've worked with them a couple of days, doing volunteer work, and I mean, it was a good time. I really just kind of stood on the side because there was like, 30 people there while we were putting up sheetrock. But I mean, it was a good time. I got to talk to people and meet them and hang out a bit. So it was a good time. And then the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, RESPA-TILA. RESPA, this is kind of, we talked about it yesterday, the real estate. We'll actually talk about that later in the lecture. I don't want to bring that up now. But as you can see, effective August 1st of 2015, they require a loan estimate, which replaces the GFE and initial truth in lending disclosure. And then at the closing disclosure replaces HUD 1 and final TIL disclosure. So kind of what these are and a little bit about them. Say Stefan, for example, wants to go buy a house, gets pre-approved, and he will get right after he's pre-approved, he will get this loan estimate, this GFE and the TIL. It's okay. I'll hop back on. Or actually, will you just bring it up? It's right over there. All right, so here's a loan estimate. It's a little hard to see in here. There we go. Zoom in a little bit. So this is a loan estimate, and kind of what it goes through. It'll go through the loan costs, or the loan terms, projected payments beforehand, and then what it expects that you'll need to take to closing cash-wise. Whether or not, as a buyer, you'll be giving or receiving cash at closing. It'll disclose all that information once you're pre-approved for the loan. This kind of took over, as I said, it was for the loan estimate took over for the estimate, and it gives an estimate. The GFE, yes.
Good faith estimate.
Yeah, the good faith estimate. There's a lot of estimates in here, and the initial truth in lending disclosure. So it took over. It basically just wrapped those into one. It's the same thing technically. It just wrapped those into one, and now we call it a loan estimate. So yeah, those are its terms. And the closing disclosure, it replaces HUD 1 and TIL disclosure. And back in the day, the HUD 1 was hated by real estate agents. Absolutely hated. They really fought. A lot of agents fought to get it taken off and get this the closing disclosure restructured. Because at the very top of the HUD statement, the very first thing that was listed was the commission paid to each agent. And as you can imagine, after, say why you're going through the buying a house process, you have to go through HUD. You're a little lower income. You're scraping by, trying to buy this house. You finally get approved from the government. And the very first thing you see off of buying your house is that Stefan over here made $8,000 off of it. I mean, what are your kind of initial thoughts? Yeah, like why? I mean,
for it, bro.
Yeah, why is he getting that $8,000? And this is kind of where I'll go into one of the spiels about talking of working as a real estate agent. The HUD, because the HUD made us look really bad. It made us look like we were greedy, like we were pretty much stealing money from people who didn't have it. But the thing is, in real estate, the majority of people, they don't understand or realize the work that goes on behind the scenes for each transaction. I mean,
There's 180 something steps or something that a real estate agent is.
yeah, like listed out, there's over 180 steps that go through for each real estate transaction.
Your client won't even see like half of those.
Your
Or
client,
more.
yeah, I mean, some say that, before you're putting it up on before putting an MLS or a listing up on the MLS, 80% of the listing agent's work is done before it actually goes up on the MLS. Kind of once you get it up on the MLS, it's easy riding from there. You just receive a contract, negotiate it out, and then you go through the actual process of closing that deal. But putting a house up on the market it's a painstaking process. I mean, how on average would you say how long does it take to put each one of your listings into the MLS? Actually, before you answer that, how long would y'all think it takes to put a listing up on the MLS, to type in the information, upload the pictures? How long would y'all think, typically?
To type in the information and upload the pictures, or
Yeah.
the work?
Just to type in the information and upload the pictures. A day? It's a little overstated. Typically,
yeah, it'd probably take me an hour.
Yeah.
But it's the stuff that you gotta do beforehand that takes a long time.
Yeah, it takes. Well, I mean, I talked to one of my clients back in the day, or not back in the day. It was a while back, and they were like, I was talking about putting up the listing on the MLS, and they're like, well, that's easy. I mean, you just search the property up, it autofills, and then you upload the pictures. Like, it should take you no more than 15 minutes. And I mean, I just kind of, I laughed, not disrespectfully, but I was like, oh, no. Like, then you have to go through multiple websites to find the physical description, the legal description of the property. There's a lot of work that goes into just uploading it, not to mention the taking the pictures, the staging of the house before taking the pictures. There's a ton of stuff that goes into every real estate transaction, anything you do. I mean, I can tell you myself, I had a listing that I sold in Beaumont, Texas. And if you don't know, Beaumont from here is about 2 hours and 45 minutes away, around a 3-hour drive. And so I drove down there one day, put my sign in, got all the requirements that I thought I needed to put it up on the MLS. I got back into town and realized that my pictures had not saved. And it was a Friday. I was going to upload the pictures, put it on the MLS, be out of here by 5, and have a great weekend. Go enjoy my weekend, my Saturday and Sunday. Well, it turns out you need to upload pictures, and you can't just upload them from Google Street View. So I didn't have my clients who were selling the property in Beaumont. They don't actually live in Beaumont. They live in Austin. So they didn't know anybody that could go take pictures for me. I text around in all my groups, all my buddies that live in Houston, the Houston area. Hey, is anybody going to be in Beaumont? Nobody reached back out to me, or they did, but nobody was going to be in the Beaumont area. But that listing had to be up within 5 days of signing the listing agreement. So what I had to do is that Saturday morning, I woke up nice and early, hit the road again, back-to-back days, pulled 6 hours round trip to Beaumont. And the second day on that Saturday was to take literally a total of 7 pictures with my iPhone.
Yeah, you have to have a minimum of 7 pictures, and I think it's $100 fine for every day that your listing is up without pictures. So it's like 100 days. If you go 10 days, that's $1,000.
Yeah. So I mean, the requirements and kind of what's going on. I mean, obviously, I didn't tell my clients, oh, I'm just doing so much work out here, having to drive back to your property because my pictures got deleted. I mean, I didn't tell them that, but you don't nobody really understands the amount of work that really goes into being a real estate agent. So when people do get upset, I've heard of properties that sell for millions of dollars, and the commission check is $50,000. Well, your clients are going to be like, well, you only worked for 3 months. That's a whole year's worth of work. You don't deserve $50,000. I mean, you're going to have to, and you will have clients say that to you. And you're going to have to tell them, like, hey, yeah, I mean, you have no idea what I've gone through, the stuff I've done to try to get this property sold or to try to help you buy this property. I mean, there is a ton of work. There's calling all kinds of people that really you shouldn't have to call, either the opposing agent or your client. They should be doing the calling and figuring out of the specifics of the situation. But people are incompetent and like to be lazy. So as an agent, you're going to have to pick up the slack. You're the one representing them. You want to represent them in your best interest, and you want to give them the best service. So you're going to have to be going out of your way, doing stuff that you never thought you'd have to do to get the job done. But when you get that check, I mean, it's all going to be worth it in the end. It's a grind to get a check.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So once they sign the contract and say that you're entitled to the whole 6%, and then once they see how much you're being paid for it, if you end up closing it in like 30 days or something, and then they're like, well, you don't deserve that money, or you don't deserve the whole 6%, can they change it? Or because they've already signed the contract and saying that you are entitled to the 6%, is that like set in stone?
Yeah, once a contract is executed, it's done. No other changes can be made.
It's like if they, how do I say that?
Yeah, no. Once the executed date is filled in, like we were talking about with Travis.
It's like if you bring a buyer, then you've done your job. You brought a ready, willing, and able buyer, right? So you are entitled to your money, and you can actually sue for the commission afterwards. Actually, Justin has to be the one that sues for the commission. But you can, because you technically did your job and you are owed that money, even if they want to pull out. Does that make sense? Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So like I was saying, once you have the contract that is completely executed, there is an amendment page to where you can make changes to the contract, but they are very, very few. You can change the closing date, the price, or what other? I know you can make like more objections, ask for more stuff in the amendment. But yeah, no, broker splits or broker fees are not included in the amendment. So once they sign for the full 6%, 3 and 3 each way, they're locked in completely, and they can't make any changes to that, fortunately.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yes. So, in the trips to Beaumont, I was, asking you, when it was, 100 degrees outside or whatever, and you had to put those posts out for your banner. I mean, how was that for you?
We didn't have the right equipment. It would have been easier with the right equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did have to go out there.
Yeah, so he was out there for, I don't know how long.
A few hours.
Yeah, a few hours, and had just putting 2 posts in the ground to hang up a banner to market the property. So you're gonna have to get into. You're gonna have to talk with some of your clients and really explain to them and show them why you are entitled and you are worth the 3% that they originally promised you, because it really popped up a lot in HUD, and that's kind of why I brought it up.
Lose the Zoom people, or did we lose the recording?
It'll just like cut out on the recording. Like,
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see if we're still doing it. It stopped the recording.
No way.
No, we're recording. There we go.
Okay.
All right, sorry about that, guys.
Yeah, sorry, we had some technical difficulties. The Wi-Fi went out again. Typical. Really typical.
You hate to see it. You hate to see it.
Got everybody. Is everybody back in the class? Everybody can hear and see?
Yeah, we're good.
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Alrighty.
You were still talking.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. I think we're. Well, yeah, and so in talking about just to kind of wrap this slide up, in the closing disclosure now. Oh, actually, I have a closing disclosure for that. So in the closing disclosure, okay. So this is kind of what it looks like. It's very, very similar to a loan estimate. Technically the same thing, but it just has the finalized numbers on it. Obviously the loan amount, your loan terms again, the projected payments, and then the closing costs. And then there's another sheet that goes into detail about the specific closing costs. I'm not going to bore you all with that. There's no reason to look at it. But it goes into the specifics of closing costs that you will either need to buy or that you will receive at closing. And then also talks about the commission split for the realtor. So it's no longer at the top of the page. It's on the second page of the closing disclosure. So it has been a noticeable change that people are a little less disappointed now, and there's a lot less heated arguments over that. Now that it has been changed. And then talk about significant federal legislation. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Just based off of just general knowledge, what are some groups that we cannot discriminate against? What would y'all say? Race, yes. Gender, yes. Can I get a couple from some people online? We have race and gender.
We got easy.
You can't.
Disability.
I'm sorry?
Disability.
Disabilities, yes, correct. Can anybody name anything else?
Is random the family one, or is that the one not?
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Familial status? Yeah, whether if you, if you have 2 babies and you want to rent a place, what are they called? The landowner, the landlord. There we go. That's what I was thinking about. The landlord. The landlord can't say, "Oh, you have 2 babies. I don't want you in my house because they're always going to be crying."
2 babies.
Yeah, because we don't want 2 babies in our house. Like they can't say that based off familial status.
They discriminate based on pets, though.
Yes.
If they don't like the pets you have,
Yes.
What?
on the rent team, yeah. They
However, they cannot discriminate against a service animal.
They cannot do that, correct.
Yes.
How registered am I?
Yeah, I actually had a lease the other day, or somebody that I was helping with a lease, and they have a Chihuahua, a Yorkie, and a Lab, and on the MLS it said that they only allowed 1 pet, and at the beginning they told me, oh yeah, we're gonna have a Yorkie and a what was the other little one that I said? Chihuahua? Yorkie and a Chihuahua. I was like, dang, 2 of the most annoying dog breeds that I could ever think
That
of.
ain't no joke.
Like every Yorkie that I've ever met, I mean, they are cute, they are dope, but they're just little yappers. And then Chihuahuas, I mean, I don't like them at all. So, and that's just how it is. But I told the listing agent, I was like, hey, they have a Yorkie and a Chihuahua. I know it says that you have 1, you only allow 1 pet, but is it okay if we bring in 2? My tenant says that they are very well mannered, well behaved, shouldn't cause a whole lot of problems. The landlord was like, yes, of course, like we can accommodate for two. Turns out about 45 minutes later, the tenant texted me and was like, hey, another thing, my boyfriend will be living there as well, and he has a lab. Is that okay? But he'll stay outside in the backyard. He won't be inside at all, tearing everything up, all that kind of stuff. So I texted the agent again. I was like, hey, is it okay if we bring a lab? It'll only be in the backyard. Obviously, they're going to pick up after all the dogs, so it shouldn't be any problem. Well, the landlord doesn't want any large dog breeds at his property at all. No large dog breeds, no matter what they are, how well mannered, unless they are a service dog. Yes, they have to allow those, but he didn't want any big dogs. So yeah, you can't discriminate based on pets. And I would, if I were a landlord, I would let 100 labs in before I let a Yorkie and a Chihuahua. But that's just me. I mean, I don't know.
Labs shed so much though.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, so some of the things that the Equal Credit Opportunity Act can't discriminate based off of national origin. National origin, race, sex, religion is another thing. Age, yeah, these are all groups that you can discriminate against. People that you can discriminate against, or the reasons you can discriminate against people, is for income or credit score. If you understand or you realize that they're most likely not going to be able to pay off this loan, or they're most likely not going to be able to pay the monthly rent here based on their income, you are allowed to discriminate and deny them status on that. So the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, this is talking more about what we call kickbacks, and kickbacks are back pre-2008, there were real estate agents who, just like everyone nowadays, want to make the most money that they can. So when selling a house or buying, the real estate agent would hire an appraiser to come appraise the house, and they would say, if we had a house listed at 275, but like I really knew it's going to be it's going to be worth around 250, 260, but if we needed to get 275 so we could get approved for that loan, what I would tell that appraiser is like, hey, like I know this property's not going to appraise for 275, but you and me, we're cool, we're good buddies, so why don't you just go ahead and tell the bank that this appraises for 275, so we can get that full price, I can get a bigger commission, and I'll kick you back a little bit of money. So that's kind of like what the term kickback means. It was done with not only appraisers but inspectors, trying to kick stuff under the rug, keep this foundation issue under wraps, and I'll give you a little money. Like I want to get the most out of this house as possible. So after 08, that's when they really cracked down, and there are no kickbacks allowed. You can't share monies between two different parties in a real estate transaction that are working for one client, if that makes sense. No money can be transferred between inspector and real estate agent, inspector, or appraiser, or anything like that. I'm trying to shut out those kickbacks. Truth in lending, we talked about truth in lending quite a bit. They're going to provide you that form talking about giving you the percentage rate that you're getting on your loan, the amount financed, the interest, and then the total amount of the loan, the total that you will be paying, and then gives you the specifics on payments, monthly payments. We went over that yesterday, and I'm hoping y'all remember that. Really? Yeah. So here at Truth in Lending a lot, it's really big as well. After 08, after 08, after the housing market crashed, there was a lot of regulations put into real estate and the housing market, trying to avoid that disaster all over again. Talking about Truth in Lending and the Community Reinvestment Act. It's kind talking about steering as well, and I don't know if y'all have heard steering throughout the course yet. Have y'all familiar with the term steering? No. So what steering is you go in and apply for a loan. You might not make as much money, so you qualify or you're pre-approved for a loan of $150,000. Well, us as real estate agents and also loan officers who write up the loans and the underwriters and all of them, they can't say, well, I mean, you're only approved for $150,000, so you're gonna want to go stay in this area of Bryan. You're gonna have to stay in this area. That's called steering. Very legal nowadays.
It's just pushing.
Justin was saying was like redlining too, though. Or is that?
Yes, it's similar to red line.
It's sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's similar. Yeah, it all means the same thing. Like trying to push. I mean, word of mouth to live by. I mean, let your clients choose everything. I mean, you're just there to help them find a home, or you're there to help them sell a home. You really should never be telling them what to do. That's just kind of how I live it. Just be nice to people, help them as much as you can. That's what you're here to do, and you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. Because you definitely don't want any, especially the federal government, coming after you because you're caught steering or redlining or anything like that. Doing kickbacks, especially, it's all really big stuff. So yeah, a really good rule of thumb as a real estate agent: just be nice, be cool with everyone, and represent your clients the best you can to the best of your ability, and you're going to be all right. The next one. I'll finish up here. So yeah, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. This kind of talks about lenders and what they can and cannot do, and we'll go through them real quick. Lender may not ask if you are divorced or widowed. Talk about receipt of alimony or child support unless used to qualify. Ask for info about spouse unless going on the loan. If your spouse is going to be going on the loan, going on the title as well, then obviously they will be able to ask questions about them, get some information about their job, status and whatnot. Also, they can ask about birth control practices or intentions. This kind of has a lot to do with, lenders who were a member of one religion and didn't, weren't okay with people taking birth control. This was just another way of them, discriminating against those people and kind of giving those people maybe more poor terms to their loans. So now you're no longer allowed to talk about birth control practices. And then discounted income due to source. What the lender may ask you about and talk to you is they'll ask if you're married, unmarried, or separated. Obviously, for financial reasons, if it's going to be you're going to approve for a lot more if you have two people of income as opposed to one. So they're not trying to discriminate, asking you if you're married or whatnot. You're going to be able to get approved for more, obviously. So there you are able to ask if you're married, single, separated, that kind of stuff. That really doesn't make sense because you can ask if married, unmarried, or separated, but you can't ask if divorced or widowed. I don't know. That's just weird wording of it.
It's just a more touchy subject.
Yeah, the divorce and widowing. I guess it's just yeah. I guess we'll keep it with that. Ask about obligation to pay alimony or child support. Again, anything kind of relating to your financial background or kind of what you have going on financially, they are going to be able to ask about it because, as we talked about, they're loaning you a large amount of money, and they're going to want to make sure you pay it back, so we don't have to go through the dirty foreclosures and all the litigation that comes with that. So they're pretty specific now in what they ask for. They know exactly what they're asking, and they can ask if a spouse. They can ask for spouse info if spouse is liable for payment. So yeah, like I said, if your spouse is going to be put on the loan, if they're going to be put on the title, they are able to ask about that. You must report credit information on couples separately for each name. I don't know why. I mean, they don't have joint credit scores for couples, so I'm sure that's why they said separately. But yeah, they can ask about your credit score and your credit report. They can ask about race or national origin, but borrower can refuse to answer. Yeah, so not much to say on that. I mean, they can, but never are you obligated to answer anything based on your race or national origin. Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act is kind of what we were talking about RESPA earlier, and the kickbacks and the redlining and kind of, as it says over there, it applies to real estate brokers and agents, mortgage brokers and bankers, title companies and agents, home warranty companies, hazard insurance agents, appraisers, flood insurers, and tax service suppliers, home and pest inspectors. And like we were talking about yesterday, all the disclosures that are required by RESPA, the good faith estimate, which became the loan estimate after August 1st, 2015, which we talked about today, the HUD whatnot, which became the closing disclosure, and then at settlement, compare loan estimate and closing disclosure after settlement, annual escrow statement.
And we're gonna need to know all these acronyms.
No. So
You need to know RESPA for sure.
yes, you'll want to know RESPA.
It's just a lot of acronyms.
Yeah, that's what I
I know
told
which
you.
ones I need to know.
I told you coming into it that we're going to get a lot of acronyms today. No, you don't. If you just know what good faith estimate is, I'm hoping that we can talk about it enough in class that you're going to see GFE and you'll be able to think, okay, good faith estimate. Now, what is the general idea of good faith estimate? What was the general idea of it? And you think about it. I mean, talking about an estimate, it's talking about closing costs, loan payments, loan terms, that kind of thing. So, you're definitely going to want to go back through these slides, go back through, if you can, I don't know if you'll have access to previous tests you've taken and are able to see what answers. And I'll talk to Justin beforehand because a lot of what is going on in this real estate test is just repetition. They ask a lot of the same questions. They're just trying to stump you up word-wise. That's all they're doing. They're just making sure that you're reading. So, you're not going to have to know exactly what the good faith estimate is and exactly what it does and when it's applied and when you get it and that kind of thing. You just need to know the general idea of it all.
So, I guess we can talk about after class, but considering our exam is tomorrow, did we ever get a definitive time on when we're taking it?
No, trust me, I've been in class.
You're gonna have to see. I don't know how if he wants to do it the same way he did last time, for everybody sets a time.
Yeah.
I think he just wants to set one and put it in concrete, but I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. Oh no. Travis is out of town.
I don't know what I haven't seen him.
He's okay.
Maybe we should remove that.
He's probably.
Yes, so no exam time? Is that what it means?
It's probably. I don't even know.
Is Justin still here?
No, he's
No,
not.
he took off.
Great.
We'll get that figured out by tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll finish up here and then we can talk about it.
Sorry, that was random.
No. I mean, it's a good
Sorry.
question. I'm glad you brought it up. We'll just finish with this and then we can definitely talk about it. If you don't mind going to the next. Some more federal legislation. Truth in Lending Act. We've gone over this 100 times. A lot of stuff in this finance class is going to be very repetitive, so I'm just going to read over it real quick. You can follow along. The TILA, it allows the consumer to compare cost of credit, must disclose the APR, annual percentage rate. Regulation Z requires disclosure of all terms of finance. Community Reinvestment Act, we talked about it today. Financial institutions must provide credit in areas they serve. In the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, lenders must report demographic information. State and local financing agencies, industrial development agencies, they run off of IRBs, mortgage insurance programs, general obligation revenue bonds, community redevelopment agencies, low-income housing tax increment financing. These are not on the test. I've already looked through the test and kind of know what to touch on. So the reason I'm reading through these so fast is there's really no need to know them. I never knew what these were.
Yeah.
And they're just filler crap that they put in there. Agricultural lending, it's kind of the last thing we'll talk about. I touched on it a little bit at the beginning of class. There are cyclical requirements. As I said, farmland is very up and down in its price fluctuations. You know, it's ran by the Farm Credit System. We talked about Ginnie Mae, FHA, VA. Another lender is Farmer Mac, and he deals typically with that government agency, but he deals with typically rural areas, farms, that kind of thing. That's who they lend to. That's the governmental specialized rural lender. And yeah, USDA rural development. You would think if you're trying to get a USDA rural development loan, you would expect that it's way out in the boonies, 50 miles outside of College Station, where it's nothing you can see but farmland. That's not true. There's actually residential residential zones in the Bryan College Station area that are still USDA rural development zones. So you could be able to apply for these loans. And USDA, like every other government loan, has a lot less that you have to put down. And so we'll go into the different types of loans that are offered throughout this class and the different benefits of all of them, because they do. There are some very good benefits to government enforced loans. Like I said, the government technically isn't in the money making business, so they're not like a bank. They have lower interest rates. You have lower amounts of money that you have to put down in cash at the beginning, lower closing costs. So, and we'll get in more into those later on in class. And that's going to finish us up tonight. Does anybody have any questions pertaining to the lecture that we just had? Nothing in class, everything good online. Okay, so talking about the test tomorrow,